Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Blacklist. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have this dude named Ogden who basically works for a particular government agency, and he basically has ties to actually even include his own code and a lot of the satellites that the government uses for national security, knowing where to kind of aim their attacks or when attacks might be coming their way. And obviously because of Ogden's codes and stuff like that, it could change everything. It could it could tell them everything's fine when an attack is coming, or tell them an attack is coming when it's not. So it throws everything into chaos. And basically what we saw at the beginning was him creating a false attack, and then everyone at that base or whatever facility bracing for impact because they think missiles are on the way, but everyone else's systems say everything's okay, and obviously proving his point. And so he's trying to sell it to the highest bidder. At the same time, it's interesting because it's how the story folds into Cooper's story about him getting offered this position as a new senator, because there's this Senator Warwick who is retiring, and he chose specifically Cooper to be his replacement. And I thought it was interesting because in the beginning, because even, Harold's thinking like, all right, he wants me on this position. He wants me particular because I check a few boxes. I'm black, I'm law enforcement. It's just like the optics of it. Like, it's like, yes, but Reddington's also like, you also check other boxes as well. I'm one of those boxes because it's like, you let me get away with like a lot of stuff that I do and let me be who I am. It's like, oh, because I work with you. It's like, no, you tolerate me, essentially. I like that Reddington corrected it. It's like, no, you don't work with me. You just tolerate what I do. You tolerate who I am and what I do. And he can, up to outside perspective, that can look like ambiguity in the sense of, hey, morally, I could sway this person. So it's like, yeah, you let me do what I got to do because it's, because what I'm able to bring to the table on the side of the blacklist and, taking down powerful criminals like the good we do with the task force. But other people could use it as an opportunity to see, hey, he's morally gray in these areas. That means maybe the time will come where I need him to do something for me. He'll slide a certain way. So Reddington's looking at it from that perspective. And Cooper bring this up to his wife, which I also love that Reddington's like, whoa, wait. You told me before you told your wife? Please tell me there's no trouble in paradise. It's like, no, it's fine. But his wife is so excited later on. She's like, oh my God, Senator Cooper. She's like, oh, she likes the sound of that. Even later on being governor. Ooh, President Cooper. Really like the sound of that. But obviously, like, Cooper tried to tell his wife what Reddington said. She's like, oh, that man's terror. He's not a good person. He's a bad person. Who is he to kind of judge, say anything about someone judging your character, considering his character? Because for her, it's like, you're a decent, honest, and caring person. And she's like, you'd be great for the job as a senator. But what I also loved, like, during this whole situation, because obviously, like, there's actually that kind of sad thing of, like, Wrestler and Park go to meet Ogden's wife, and she's like, what? Oh, he must be being held. It's like, no, we think your husband disappeared on purpose. She's like, no, my husband loves this country. He loves us. He's an honest man. And hard cut to while she's saying that, oh, it turns out he's having an affair with a lady named Nina who turns out to be a Russian spy. I'm surprised they didn't bring any. I guess it's like there's no point to, like, it's already above everyone's head, like in the sense that we already kind of know it. It's an overlaying thing. No reason to kind of draw comparisons to like the Reddington and Katarina thing, especially considering, well, he's not. Well, they all kind of know he's not really Reddington, but he had Katarina killed. So it's like, I guess, because like I said, Russian spy, someone from the U.S. government, like, they're not making those parallels because I guess they're so obvious that it's just, I'm surprised they didn't tackle that at all this episode. If we were dealing with, if Liz was still around, there'd probably be some they'd probably lean into those parallels, but because she's not with the team at the time, they probably didn't feel the need to really lean into those parallels between this and her family situation, so. But while Cooper is secretly dealing with all this senator stuff, or really, meeting with Senator Warwick and having those conversations about what this would necessarily all entail, I love that at one point Park is, like, oh, where's Mr. Cooper? Wait, he's not here. We're literally about to deal for war in space. And then like Aram's being like, oh, you're being a little overdramatic. She's like, well, what would you call it? And he's like, well, this. And then he was like, and then like Wrestler and Parker looking at him, and he is like, and then Aram's like, so like I said, how could he leave us at a time like this? I was like, I love Aram's reaction sometimes. It's so damn good. But it is interesting that, well, to be fair, Harold is still, keeping, abreast of the situation as, things are developing. But it is interesting, too, that he's also using this opportunity. I mean, I guess it's like, you got to strike while the lightning's, it's a lightning in a bottle type of situation. I butchered that metaphor I was actually going for, because it's like, I might as well strike now, because it is the thing of, he's, the guy who was talking to earlier in the episode was like, you've done so much good with the task force that imagine what you could do as a senator. Like, obviously it opens a lot more doors and opportunities. So I think that's kind of where Cooper was coming from with that. But then immediately, like, Warwick was like, oh yeah, like there's this black budget bill. You don't get to really know where the money's going. You basically say yay or nay on the allocated budget they're planning on, and it's like, oh, it's going to be 80 billion, and I want you to say yay. So it's like, that was kind of interesting. But it's just, he had said like the reason why he wanted to retire was I'm 60, but part of me was wondering, like, was that really the case? Or I mean, I wonder, is there something deeper to that? Will we ever circle back to this storyline, whether or not? Because I like that being the overarching theme of this episode is kind of where you morally stand, trying to do the right thing. Because obviously they were able to eventually track down Ogden, because he'd already made at least he was in the process of making the bid had already been kind of set in place, and now he was just basically off to make the deal. I was actually surprised with that whole conversation with Nina when they finally caught her and everything, where like, I didn't know if that was real or not, where it was like, because Wrestler's like, hey, we'll make a deal. We don't want you. We want Ogden. He'll take the fall, but you can find a way out of this. But Park was like, what? I'm sure Main Justice isn't going to be all about. They never confirmed whether that was like them playing good cop or bad cop, because but it still kind of fits the theme of the episode of how far are you willing to let this Russian spy kind of do whatever she wants to, because it's like Ogden's the main thing, and if it gets you the information, I mean, people cut deals all the time, but I think this is a very like extenuating circumstance of like, are you really going to cut her a deal? Just let her go. It's like, we can't just like turn the other way, considering she set this all up because she got close to Ogden on purpose to get access to all this. So that's why I'm wondering, like, whether or not that was like is a bad cop or good cop thing, or was that legitimate like disagreement they had? I can see it being both and or one or the other, But obviously, considering like, oh, he's going to Mongolia to make the deal, but it's like they don't have enough time to get there. So Cooper's the one that suggests they do basically a drone strike situation, which Aram is the main one being super against it, because for everyone else, it's like him doing what he's doing is a great danger to the country. So it's like, immediate action has to be taken. But for Aram, it's like, the fact is that like he's a American citizen we're doing this to without due process. So it's kind of like, do the ends justify the means type of situation. And obviously it was an interesting and it's very tense moment when Cooper is there in front of other people, because it's a whole meeting about making something like this happen. So it's like they got to basically run through the logistics of try to saying like whether or not this is an actionable situation that calls for this circumstance. And eventually, after talking it through about kind of what this could mean, like, oh, normally under these circumstances, we should let Mongolia know, but we can't let them know what's really at the cost here, because if they'd have to let them know why they're trying to kill him on their soil, that it was a bit, that he was trying to sell some of our technological intelligence, and it's like maybe they'll try to take it for themselves or copy it one way or another. It's like, it's too much sensitive information to let anyone know. So it's that complicated thing. But I think it's also like there are rules that allow you to not have to inform a particular government of what you're necessarily doing if it proves that the government can't do anything quickly enough. If they aren't able to respond or jump onto something quickly enough, then you can kind of do it unintentionally. But if we don't even try ahead of time, then that's kind of like skirting the line. But like I said, when it was all said and done, they were able to make it like, oh, we're gonna drop this. And right when it was all said and done, I was like, it's going to be Reddington. Because we saw this entire episode. We'll get to Reddington's side of things. But he was focusing up on building up, trying to get some money together really quickly. Trying to not to like touch anything liquid, but actually try and like get some solid cash on hand. I was wondering what the hell he was doing. And lo and behold, it turns out, he was buying all the stuff from Ogden. But the moment that happens, like, Cooper tries to like change the circumstances of saying, because it's Raymond Reddington, because obviously everyone in that room doesn't know about him. I mean, the only person who knows is the president. So I'm curious, like, that probably plays a role in, Mr. President, I have to have a conversation with you. Turns out the person who bought it was Raymond, or I'm curious, because there's also there's also like the angle, like the president, even if he finds out about it, can't acknowledge it because it's supposed to be like a plausible deniability type of situation. So I just thought that I'm surprised we didn't get that aspect of the episode, but I guess it's like, we know that the president knows about obviously certain people in the government, but obviously other people in the government are unaware, because if they did, they would have turned to Harold and like, what the hell is Raymond doing there? Like, he's the one doing this, which I guess he could have been like, which would have led to a whole bunch of questions and stuff that I'm sure Harold wasn't ready to answer. So, but luckily, Cooper was able to kind of shift everything by being like, Raymond isn't an army of his own. Like, if this was a country trying to buy the intelligence, that's one thing. But he's a man that kind of has no allegiances to no one. He's kind of buying it for himself. But it's like, yeah, but he could sell it to a different government. Yet he's still kind of I think he still falls under that category of like, if we were in a position we could arrest him, but killing him, like, obviously it changes the circumstances of why the president okayed this in the first place. So now that we add this element to it, it changes like the circumstances. So they had to call the president back up to let him know about what went down. But it's like, hey, Cooper's like, we'll get on top of this. We'll kind of, I promise you, we'll kind of figure this whole thing out. So, but on the Cooper side of things, Denbei and Reddington have looked into the black budget for him, because I think for him, he wanted to, because he doesn't want to go into something just blind of like, just leaping on blind things. He's like, no, I want to see for myself what goes down. And he ends up finding out some of the money for the black budget goes towards a company that Senator Warwick's son owns. And he was like, that's not bad. But it's like, no, the fact is that you're still using government money for your own personal gain, which is a situation of like, now it's kind of a stalemate, because it's like, hey, you can't tell anybody on me because what you did was illegal, because you broke a crime, because these were meant to be, no one's supposed to know, legally no one's supposed to know what these are all about. You went about a legal means of finding out. So only way out of this is for us to pretend like we never met. And because you crossed this line, obviously there's no senator role for you, so goodbye. But obviously for Cooper, yeah, he wanted a job, but if it meant kind of crossing those lines, then it's a big no. Which obviously it's something that Denbei talked about before, because even Cooper asking the question like, how does Reddington know things that he's not supposed to know? How does he have access to information that no one has access to? And, Denbei's like, he's a resourceful man. And at the end of the day, you're a good man. So don't let whatever's in this black budget stop you from taking that senator job. But obviously it was. But it also shows you what kind of man Cooper is, because even Reddington said it himself. Because obviously they're trying to tell him like, you're a good person. But for him, he's like, am I really? Because of the fact is that he was like, I was about to do a drone strike. I was about to kill an American without due process. Like, the fact is that he was willing to go that far. For him, it kind of makes him worried. But Reddington's like, because you see the world in shades of gray. Because for a lot of people, it's black and white. Not a lot of people are willing to look in that shade of gray. And the fact is, you are willing to see that isn't a detriment. It's not a hindrance. It's actually a positive. It's something good, because you can see things from a perspective that no one else is willing to. And I thought it was so fascinating where he was basically saying that, like, obviously, because there's a whole conversation of, Cooper bringing up a good point about, hey, like, once again, I've crossed more lines. I haven't told anyone about Agent Keen's situation. He's like, working with you has changed me. It's like none of us on this team started off the people we were beforehand. But even Reddington's like, I'm a better person now because of all of you guys as well. Like, all working with you guys has kind of had an impact and effect on him. And I think we have, seen that effect over the course of the series. But the thing I was forgetting about was what he said specifically to Cooper about, you could have easily just taken that position of, oh, like the senator wanted you to make this promise. You could have just made the promise once you got in the office, completely ignore what he wanted and did what you wanted to. You could have done that, but you didn't, because you're a man of your word. Your word is your bond. When you make a promise, you stick to it. And that aspect is like, for him, is like, that's something that is so amazing about Cooper. Is like, you are an honorable person. Yeah, you might kind of doubt your own self from time to time, but at the end of the day, you have a good heart. You recognize times that need a little shade of gray, that, there's a lot of good work that is done with the task force and everything. So, and even Reddington be like, well, you got a victory at the end of all of this, because this is all the stuff that Ogden ended up stealing, which we ended up seeing him get arrested. It was actually kind of, you almost feel a little sad for him, because he shows up planning on meeting up with Nia, and it's like, oh, lo and behold, they're waiting there to arrest him. So that's going to end up kind of blowing up his family situation quite a bit. So it's like, oh, you were not only was your husband cheating on you, he was also having an affair on you with a Russian spy. So that's definitely going to put a damper on, like, oh, he's not the man you thought he was, so that could be a whole thing in itself. But I love the whole situation of Reddington. It's like, oh yeah, like, because it's like, why even take the case in the first place if you were planning on buying it? And it's like, well, he's like, you guys prove your own, prove worthy in your own right. Don't sell yourselves short, because of this opportunity, it allows him now to resell it to the government. It's like, oh, you're going to sell our stolen stuff back to us. Yep. He was like, for $200 million. But for the friends and family discount, I'll knock it down to $175. And it's like, how much did you pay for it? $150. But he was like, it's, family and friends, you're able to kind of bump that up, so I can make at least a $25 million profit off of this. And then Cooper's like, okay, I can get you $155 and a thank you, because if you weren't hiding all this information, you wouldn't have nearly got yourself vaporized by the Reaper. So Reddington's kind of like, I will take the $155 and yes, thank you for not vaporizing us. So it's like, yeah, because if Reddington had been a little bit open from the beginning, I mean, it's like, luckily it was Cooper. If it was anyone else, they would have definitely pulled the trigger and got you. You wouldn't be here right now. So, which is interesting, because Reddington had that whole thing about, willing to take any risk type of thing, and for it to kind of come back full circle in that regard in this episode, I thought was fascinating. But also the thing Cooper was talking about was his relationship with Charlene. It's like, well, how will Charlene respond? It's like, she'll be sad for about 10 minutes, then shrug it off, popcorn, and we'll watch an episode of The Chi. Which I was partially wondering about. Some, but then I was like, no, that's Showtime's part of the Paramount Plus situation. So that's like CBS. So I was wondering, like, I don't know. It's always interesting when like shows reference other shows. It's always just an interesting thing. I get too much in my own head about it, but and even Reddington be like, oh, is that really all it is? He's like, yeah, that's what an ordinary life is. It's like, yeah, you should try it sometime, and ordinary life can be very extraordinary, under certain circumstances. And that's actually what Reddington was trying to do. Because it almost felt like a completely different show, like any of the stuff with Ed. I'm like, tonally, this feels quite different. I'm like, and that's, to me, that's the saddest thing, where I was immediately like, oh, he must be trying to get something from her. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, he was, but I thought, and I brought it up before when they were introducing themselves, like in an episode or two ago, when he referred to himself as Raymond. I'm like, oh, you're not using one of your aliases. You're actually using your own, well, quote unquote, your own name, but you get what I'm trying to say. But they meet up again, and he's like, oh, Anna? And she's like, Anne. He's like, right. I wonder, did he do that just to kind of ease the conversation? Because if it's like, oh, I do remember your name, I just want to, it strikes up the conversation. It makes it seem like I think, I don't know. maybe he just didn't remember, or I feel like that was done on purpose, but, could be reading too much into it. But obviously they hit it off of conversation, and he's enjoying himself. Hell, even later on, Denbei's like, you asked for an hour, it's been 3, and Reddington's like, what? My goodness. He's like, I feel so, alive. And it's like, you're letting your guard down, but Reddington's like, the peace of it all, what warrants the, the risk. It makes it all worth it at the end, kind of, even later on, kind of, because Anne was supposed to be going back home, because, she's from Kansas, and so he's even off, like, it's like, oh yeah, there's a chocolate shop, they had some wine and chocolate, had some fun. Obviously he's like, I forgot about one of my favorite bits in the episode, was like, she's like, so what are you? He's like, a fugitive, number 1 on the FBI's most wanted list. And she's like, oh, number 1, huh? I'd say, if I was saying, I would have said number 4. Shows that not only you're a stranger with delusions of grandeur. And he's like laughing along. He's like, ha ha ha. I like that when people are like, no, I'm telling you the truth, but I tell you the truth because it's so crazy and absurd. I know you won't believe me, so I don't have to feel guilty I don't have to lie to you. I can tell you the truth because you won't believe me, so I don't have to worry about telling lies. Because Reddington, it's always interesting, like I talk about with his, like, he never lies, he just tells half-truths. He never outright lies, he just will never tell you everything. So, that's always kind of been an aspect about him. But regardless, he's enjoying everything. He's having fun. But on the plane, Denbei's like, he's like, no, what was I saying? He's like, no, you weren't saying anything. You were just raining on my parade. And for Denbei, it's like, you don't want to get her mixed up in all of this. It's like, she's a normal net lady. I get how she makes you feel. It's nice what you guys have, but you can't keep going down this life because of the life you chose. And you chose this life. It's too dangerous. She's going to get hurt at the end of the day, and you don't want that. And that's the sad thing, hearing that conversation with Harold. Reddington realizes he can't have a normal life because of what his life is. His life is a never-ending criminal storm, whether it be, criminal stuff that he's mixed up. He will always be a part of that criminal world. There's kind of no, break from that. He wanted a moment to kind of have find a port in the storm, but sadly it can never last because, eventually that world will find him again, and someone nice like Anne will get caught up in it. And that was also another thing too, because she was asking a lot of questions about him. I'm like, whoa. Who is she asking all these questions about? Oh, like, what do you do? Who do you consult for? Oh, government job. Like, that's when I was like, oh, I'm getting suspicious. That in itself is a problem. He lives in a world where you have to constantly look over your shoulder, always be suspicious, because obviously there's people gunning after him. Even his pseudo daughters right now setting up the plan to destroy his reputation, destroy his criminal empire, and kill him. So there's that. Plus, once again, we don't know the full extent of everything she's planning. We still don't know what the hell she's planning on doing with Chemical Mary who she got last episode, But there would never be a break from this life. It's too ingrained in his blood. It's too ingrained in who he is that it's like, you'd kind of be living a life of a lie because you'd never be able to be 100% honest with her. You'd always have to kind of lie. Once again, not lie, just constantly be half-truths, and that's no way to live any life. That's no way to live any life. I think I said the line. There's no way to live any life, and, that's a discourtesy to her and him, And the super sad thing is, like, obviously, she's waiting outside, waiting for him. Because another angle, like I was bringing up, like, I was distraught because I was wondering if maybe she was a plant from Elizabeth. So I'm like, would Liz really go through this? You never know. But I was like, would she really go through to such lengths? But he calls her up because they were supposed to go see that Hitchcock movie, but it's like, no, she's like, no, it's okay, Raymond. He's like, no, it's not okay. She's like, don't worry, I didn't change my plans. I'm back home. I got home a couple hours ago. But Reddington's watching her. He knows that she's lying, but she's lying to make him feel better about it. So, and I guess maybe almost probably on some level being like, she probably felt like, I feel so stupid. Like, I waited here. Like, I think it's more so on him, but maybe on some level it should make herself feel like, no, like, maybe she's kind of scared that, like, if she told him the truth, like, she'd make him feel guilty, and she doesn't want that. But also maybe in her own mind, it's like, oh, maybe it makes me look a little desperate that I did change my plans. It's just that spark they felt. I'm sure that, it just, when you hit it off with someone like that, and obviously it's the whole thing of like, oh, that fox sparrow. It's like, I'll be in the park looking for him. Maybe we'll meet again. So it's sad kind of having to say goodbye to that situation, but at the same time, it's like I think Reddington did do the right thing. So like I said, I just thought tonally that presented a really interesting angle to the episode. I'm curious to see if we see any continuation of that. The fact is that he's trying to find that normal life. Granted, he's kind of pseudo walked away from things in the past. Granted, he kind of got right back to it. It was more so like the one moment he kind of walked away from everything, he was kind of in despair because he thought at the time Liz was dead. So he kind of fell apart at the time. So it was different circumstances. Now it's just kind of considering everything. He just wanted a port in the storm, like I said earlier. But also he kind of wanted more, but there can never be more with who he is and everything that he's mixed up in, because anyone that ever gets close to him will end up dead. I mean, to be fair, anyone that's close to him has ended up dead. So, it's a situation of either they'll die or the people he loves will eventually live long enough to become his enemy. Whether it be Kate, whether it be Katerina, whether it be Liz, So that's kind of like the sad overarching thing of this episode, I think. Once again, it's just like how far are you willing to go to do what you believe is the right thing? Like, do the ends justify the means? Like, it's an angle that kind of, like I said, floated throughout the entire episode. So, presented a lot of interesting things. I'm curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Like I said, like, will Reddington kind of continue this, or was this like his moment to dream, and that dream has been burst now, and he's like, I'm not going to worry about it. We'll see. I'm also curious, is the whole him getting reimbursed by the government for buying what they had stolen from them. Granted, he's not going to make a profit, though. He's actually going to be down a little bit. No. Yeah, he'll make a profit. Yeah, he'll make a $5 million profit. Yeah, I was getting stuff. Yeah, I was thinking in my head, like, the $200 million is what he wanted. It's not what he paid. He paid $150. I forgot. Regardless. Nevertheless, like I said, I'm interested to see where all this takes us going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.